Hi, this video is looking at paper 2 reading, Eduqas. I'm just going to focus on question 1 and mainly question 2 in this video. So remember, paper 2 is 2 hours, 2.5 hours for extra time, hour for both parts of the exam, reading and writing, 15 minutes extra if you have extra time. And remember, paper 2 reading is always 2 extracts on a similar theme. The theme of this exam paper is surfing. So we've got a modern extract with this guy called Andrew Cotton, who suffers a big wipeout in the surf. And then we've got an old-fashioned one by a writer called Mike Doyle, which is from the Victorian age. However, we're just going to focus on questions 1 and 2, which are on the modern extract. So remember, it's 30% of your whole grade, 2 extracts to read, 6 questions, and roughly half marks is going to get you a grade 4. So there's the modern extract, which is normally 2 pages with a couple of photos. And then the 19th century text is normally a bit shorter than this, normally maybe 3/4 of a page, because in theory it's harder to read. So there you go, 2 extracts. And 6 questions. Questions 1 and 2 are on the modern, 3 and 4 on the older one, 5 and 6 on both. And I would say the exam's cut into two kinds of questions, really. So you've got search and find questions. 1 and 3 are just easy search and find. 5 and 6 search and find. But for both extracts, question 6, there is, if you really go for the high grades, you might want to compare and explain a little bit. And what I will also do for questions 1 and 2 is I'm going to give you the main mistakes students make, so hopefully you don't fall into the same traps. Okay, question 1 and 3. So question 1 and 3, remember, similar questions but for different extracts. So what the main mistakes students, examiner said that students make were candidates didn't read the whole article. And they actually said for one of the previous exams, for the final part of this question, candidates had to read the whole of the article as the answer only appeared in the final sentence of the final paragraph, so right at the end. So what students tend to do is they never read the whole extract and they just try to pick out the answers for question 1. So read the whole article, and the idea is it also will prepare you for the harder question 2. And where students didn't do very well in this question, it was because they misread the question, actually, rather than not being able to find the details. The details should be pretty easy to find, so make sure you read each question twice. That'd be good exam technique. Okay, so to sum up then, the main mistakes are not reading the complete article before looking at the questions and misreading the questions. So let's read extract 1. I'm going to read it. If you don't want to read it and just want to look at the quotes for the next question, scroll on. If you want to read it yourself, then feel free to pause me. Okay. A liquid catapult. Big wave surfer returns to scene of nightwear wipeout. Andrew Cotton, who broke his back on a huge wave at Nazaré in Portugal in 2017, prepares to scale the notorious peaks again by Johnny Weeks. This is a newspaper article from The Guardian. Looking out from the famous lighthouse at Nazaré in Portugal, the Atlantic Ocean below looks peaceful. Baby waves, or so they seem from above, peel left across the town's beach, and there's barely a sign of this stretch of water is considered one of the most monstrous and lethal surf spots in the world. It's impossible to visualise it on a day like today when it's beautiful and sunny, but sometimes it gets big out there and sometimes it's the next level, says the surfer Andrew Cotton, as he considers how to describe the 60-foot wave that flattered him exactly a year ago. It's like moving mountains, he adds. When the waves break right in front of the lighthouse, it's like, whoa. Without doubt, it's the riskiest spot in the world to surf. Cotton knows firsthand about the risks at Nazaré, where a deep offshore canyon funnels the ocean towards the headland and creates waves up to 80 foot high. Thousands of spectators gathered to cheer on the surfers. Last November, the 36-year-old Devon surfer was hit on the head by a mammoth wave and propelled like a human cannonball before being spat 20 foot into the air, the momentum eventually slamming him down onto the surface of the ocean with such force that it shattered his back. It was dubbed Liquid Catapult into Space by the World Surf Big Wave Awards. Cotton remembers it all with eerie detail. I never jump off my board, he stresses, the panic recounted in his voice, but instincts just took over. The moments that followed were amongst the strangest of his surfing career. I've fallen off my board a lot in the last 30 years, and this time was weird like nothing else, he says. I was having this weightless feeling, and I thought maybe I was in the centre of the ocean. I thought to myself maybe I could have ridden this out, and then bang, I landed down so hard. When that impact happened, I was like, I'm dead. Was it painful? Yeah, he says with bewilderment. It was like jumping off the top of a building onto concrete. I could hear the crowd fall silent. Cotton was swept under by the ensuing white water and took a second huge wave on the head before being rescued by his tow surf partner, Hugo Val. The pair eventually made it back to the beach, where Val lost control of the jet ski and spilled Cotton onto the sand, adding injury to injury. Needless to say, Cotton won the WSL Wipeout of the Year award. Having suffered a severe vertebrae compression fracture, he was initially unable to walk. At first I was on painkillers and I was like, it's not that bad, he recalls. But after a few days they put a body brace on me to see if I could stand up. I couldn't even put my feet off the bed. Hugo was there and I could see on his face that I really effed up. It has taken 12 months of intensive rehabilitation for Cotton to fully recover. He's feeling grateful to be back on his feet, back in town, back in the water. There you go. So there's Andrew Cotton. Later on in the video, if I can sort out sort of the copyright, I'll put a little interview of him where he's talking about it, which might interest you. This is a photo of him when he did his back. Okay, so question 1 then. It's really simple. We've read that article. Now we've read it, we can do the questions, and you get 3 questions. What award did Andrew Cotton win from the World Surf League? How long did it take Andrew to fully recover from his injury? What is the name of Andrew's tow surf partner? They're all worth 1 mark, so you need to say one thing. And all you need to do for this question, for 1 and 3, find the details in the text the question's asking for, read the complete article before reading the questions like we did, and short and simple answers anyway, only. So I've had a few students where they've never attended the lessons or something, and they will start explaining this question like you have to do an analysis. It's just short and simple. Okay, if you want to do it yourself, pause the video. If not, I'm just going to go through the answers. So what award did he win? The WSL Wipeout of the Year award. How long did it take him to recover? 12 months. What is the name of Andrew's tow surf partner? Hugo Val. Okay, so again, these are all actually towards the latter half of the extract, or if they are in the latter half. So yeah, so maybe someone who wasn't as good at this question will maybe just pick out something from the first page and just think, yeah, that sort of answered the question. You've got to make sure you're specific. Okay, so and then you just write answers like that. So nice and simple. Whatever it needs, give it. If it needs a bit of a sentence, write a sentence. But mainly, it probably shouldn't need more than 3 or 4 words. Could even be 2 words. Okay, and then question 3 is exactly the same on the other extract. We're not going to do that, but just to show you it's exactly the same. If you can't find an answer, if you can't find one of the 3, leave it. You can't spend 5 minutes looking for 1 mark. Go back at the end of the exam and look for it. Okay, question 2. This is Nazare, by the way, this GIF. This shows Nazare. Okay, so this question we're looking at, it's 10 marks, so that's 13 to 15 minutes. Try and do 5 to 10 quotes. The question is, how does the writer of the article show the power of the ocean at Nazare? And you need to comment on what he says, his use of language, tone, and structure, and any other thing, basically. But in this question, every point you make, back it up with the text, so a quote. So this question is called Craft of the Writer, and you're going to comment on quotes methodically throughout the whole text, be a human dictionary, and zoom in on keywords. And you're looking for 5 to 10 quotes, but really what you can do in 15 minutes. And why do we want a lot of quotes? Well, it is basically a quote a mark. So it doesn't matter how great your answer is. If you only do 2 quotes, you're only going to get a 2 out of 10. This isn't AQA, where AQA is maybe a few quotes where you really analyse. Eduqas is almost the opposite of that. We want lots of quotes with a little bit of commentary. A main mistake for question 2 and 4 is not taking quotes across the whole extract. So if you did this, you would get marked down because you've not shown the examiner that you've taken quotes from the whole extract. You need to make sure you take it from across. What they tend to say is if you're looking for 6 quotes, but I want you to do more, what they do say is 2 from the start, 2 from the middle, 2 from the end. All right, so make sure you cover the whole thing. So this question, the writer's craft, it's all about zooming in on keywords and thinking, why has the writer used them? Why has the writer decided to use that one word over hundreds of thousands of other words in the English dictionary? My tip is, be a human dictionary, pick out certain words and say what they mean. So if the question is the one we're doing, how does the writer show the power of the ocean at Nazare? And the quote was, it completely demolished my surfboard. Think to yourself, why has the writer chosen that word? Why has the writer chosen that verb over hundreds of thousands of other words that he could have chosen? What does it mean? Be that human dictionary. Well, what does it mean? Well, it means absolutely destroying something. Yep, so my answer is, the writer shows the power of the ocean with the quote, it completely demolished my surfboard. This suggests the waves completely destroyed it. So, basically what the definition is. So I've got my focus of my question, I've got my quote, and I've got the effect of that word on the reader. Sometimes students worry about the green part, where if they're doing 10 quotes, they're writing that 10 times. The examiner doesn't care. You don't have to be creative. That's what the short story and the writing is all about. This is a reading. You're not marked on SPAG, so it's absolutely fine to be repetitive. And in fact, I think that's probably the way to go. Okay, so again, that gets a mark, but think to yourself, why would these not get marks? So same green and yellow, but they've put, this makes it sound dramatic to the reader. This is a very common thing students do, where they don't really know what to say in their explanation, so they write something generic like that. That does not mean anything. Where you get the mark is you're zooming into the word demolished, and you're just saying why the writer has chosen. So that won't get a mark. Or another common thing to say for the students is, this suggests the waves are very powerful. Basically repeating what the topic of the question is. The topic is power of the ocean. Your explanation is, this shows the waves are powerful. That's not going to get you a mark. And always something like, this makes it exciting for the reader, or this makes the reader want to read on. You don't get anything for that. You get what you get the mark for. It's picking out that certain word. And another quote is, teacher tip 2, sorry, let's just say teacher tip 2, is don't just use a fragment of the quote, write enough to give context to your point. One sentence is fine. Again, this is probably a slight difference to AQA as well, where you're really analysing one word in detail. Well, sometimes in this exam, if you don't give the whole quote, you don't really give context. So what I mean by that is, that is the ones I've just shown you. But if you just, instead of putting it completely demolished my surfboard, and you just put the quote demolished, this doesn't really explain what you're talking about. So I would say one sentence is fine. If you don't need the sentence, don't bother. But I would say make sure that you put enough in your quote to tell the examiner what you're talking about. Okay, and then on tip 3 is, if the quote is obvious and there is no need to explain. So again, this is a huge thing in this exam. If you want to get 10 quotes, you won't have time in 15 minutes to do massive explanation for all 10. So I would say half of them explain. If you need to zoom into the word, zoom in. But if it's an obvious quote, just embed it into the sentence. So if it's the same question again, how does the writer show the power of the ocean? And the quote was, there are 90-foot waves. You can just put, the writer shows the power of the ocean in that array by telling a reader there are 90-foot waves. So I've just picked a simple quote, put it in a sentence with my sentence starter as my question. There's no need to explain that. It's so obvious that you just get a mark for it. That's all the examiner will do. The examiner will just mark it. There you go, 1 mark. So again, if they're easy quotes, don't explain. If you need to explain it, then explain. Okay. Rough structure, like I say, question as your sentence starter, quote, and then explain the quote if you need to. And so I would always try to highlight at least 10 quotes from across the extract. You don't have to talk about them all, but then try to do 4 or 5 explained answers, 2 or 3 easy answers. So for example, the one we've done with the explain one, another one, so basically the easy one and explain one I just showed you. There you go. So those are the ones I've done. If you want to pause the video and have a go, but again, ones you zoom in on the things like lethal. Okay, so I'd zoom in on that. I would then say, the writer shows the power of ocean by describing the waves as lethal. This suggests they're potentially life-ending, because that's what lethal means. Or monstrous. This suggests the waves are scary and dominating, or scary and unworldly, or something like that. Yeah. But other ones that are obvious are things like the writer shows the power of the ocean as it gave Andrew a severe vertebrae compression fracture. Yeah. Another one, shattered. Think of what shattered is. It says at the bottom of the first page, it shattered his back. It doesn't just say it's hurt or broke, shattered. This suggests the waves turned Andrew's back into pieces. Yeah? Okay. So these are the quotes I would do, but you don't have to. There's loads more. Some I've highlighted, some I haven't. So if you want to pause the video and see if you can write some answers, and we'll talk about them. Okay. Again, a lot of these are easy ones. So again, the easy one here, the writer shows the power of the ocean by saying the waves are up to 80 foot high, 1 mark. The writer shows the power of the ocean by saying Andrew suffered a severe vertebrae compression fracture because of his wipeout. Easy answer. Yeah. The bottom one as well. Yeah. Okay. So show an example of an easy one then. So I put, the writer shows the power of the ocean by telling the readers there with waves up to 8 foot high. Remember, I won't get a mark for just saying the yellow bit. I've got to give my question as well. I've got to embed it, and I've put 2 quotes here together because they're similar. We also see the power by telling the reader that Andrew suffered a severe vertebrae compression fracture from the wipeout and had to have 12 months of intense rehabilitation to fully recover. I mean, you could zoom into the word intensive and talk about it, but I would say you're already going to get a mark for it. You're not going to get 2 marks for it by giving the quote and then talking about intensive. So I would say move on. But obviously, if you do need to explain. So, for example, be a human dictionary. In the very sort of top, in the sort of subheading, it calls a liquid the wave was like a liquid catapult. So again, what is a catapult if you're a human dictionary? Well, it's a device that can throw objects at a high speed. Yeah, so I put the writer shows the power of the ocean by describing it as a liquid catapult. This tells the reader Andrew was thrown at a very high speed into the waves. Yeah, it doesn't just say a big wave. It doesn't just say a wave. It says a mammoth wave. Again, this is actually the biggest goldfish or something someone found in the last year. But again, what does mammoth mean? It means immensely large, enormous. So I've put blah, 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 blah. This tells the reader Nazaré is immensely large, enormous waves. So I've shown what that word, I've said why the writer has chosen to use that word over all the other words they could use. Okay, here are some answers then. I'll only read it if I haven't read it before. Yeah, so I basically talked about all those ones. But like I said, there was absolutely loads more that you could have done. So have a think to yourself. How would you word things like notorious? It doesn't just say think about what notorious means. Yeah, think flattened him. They use a simile like moving mountains. Again, another easy one could be the writer shows the power of the ocean, where it says it is one of the riskiest spots in the world to surf. Again, nice and easy. Human cannibal. He says I'm dead, so maybe you could talk about him. The injury was so bad from the power of the ocean that he thought he wasn't going to live anymore. Yeah, there was loads more in there. Okay, cool. All right, so hopefully that's some use. So remember, key thing with question 2 is take quotes from the whole text. Try to get 10 quotes and do a mixture of easier ones and harder ones. If you need to explain it, explain it. If it's really obvious, just embed it in the sentence with the question as a sentence starter. And also remember, don't just use fragments of the quotes. Make sure you maybe write a sentence or at least the big part of the quote that tells the examiner what you're going to be talking about. Okay, hopefully that's been some of use to you.